Hello, everybody. How's everybody doing? Good. I always have this spot after lunch, and it's because I'm usually very, very loud, and it wakes you up from all the carbs you had. So thank you so much for the lovely introduction. My name's Jackie Fast. My presentation's titled Sponsor, I Love You. And really, this is about sponsorship. So that is kind of my specialization, but it's obviously sponsorship with events, and that's kind of why we're already here. So I'm going to kind of go through what people are doing now, what you should be doing, but more importantly, how you can raise funds or how you can work with other people to raise funds to make your event better. Because quite frankly, everybody knows you need money. So, as I mentioned, as I will mention, my clicker's not working, my name's Jackie Fast. So I used to run an agency called Slingshot Sponsorship. And it was based in London, and we'll kind of go through that in a bit more detail. But one of the things, actually, I was just told, I don't know if you've seen yet, but Timo was supposed to be on this slot. And I stole his slot, mostly because I'm quite demanding. But he also told me that my presentation needs to be a lot more gangster. Because apparently I'm a lot more gangster in real life than I am in a presentation. So I have frantically spent the last 45 minutes making my presentation much more gangster for the benefit of all of you. So, in terms of being gangster, I don't know if you'd agree. I'm obviously quite pint-sized, but I would say I probably approach business a lot more gangster-like. So if you guys heard Ben's speak this morning, or presentation this morning, it was all about finding music that was under 120 to kind of give you the perception that you're enjoying yourself more than you are. So I figured we'd try to put that to a test. Volume. So try to make it a bit more gangster here. Make sure people are awake, kind of. And I would rap if I could, but actually that's probably something you don't want to see. So in terms of what makes me so gangster, quite frankly, is money. My job has always been making people rich. I make companies rich, I make celebrities rich, I make events rich. All I do is make lots of people lots of money, which is kind of gangster, I would say. And so how do I do that? Well, I get sponsors. And I sell sponsorship for multi-millions of pounds of dollars. I also work with really small events, niche and regional, and generate significant revenue for them. Again, the importance of this is so vital for events, and it's continuing to grow. Right now, sponsorship is currently outpacing the spend in advertisement. What that means is that brands are investing in more experiential activity, like sponsorship, than they are in traditional advertising, traditional marketing. So understanding how to do this, understanding how to integrate this with your event, is quite frankly the only way you're going to survive. So if you're not listening just yet, or if I haven't got your attention, hopefully I've got everybody's now, because again, it all boils down to this. I am an expert at getting people rich. So everybody should listen, basically. Thank you. I mean, I got applause in the first 5 minutes. I think I'm doing something right. So within the first year, so I mentioned I set up a business. My business was called Slingshot Sponsorship. I set it up in my bedroom with like no money, £2,000 and a laptop. But because what I do, or what I guess we kind of create, is so vital. In the first year, I was working with people like Prince, the musician, the Rolling Stones, and massive brands like Red Bull. Following that, I kind of worked there. Well, I worked there. I owned it. I sold it 6 years later. But 6 years later on, I was working with massive global brands like Shell, looking at how they're going to reconstruct and transform their sponsorship and marketing activity because the world has changed. And I tapped into that. I work with Sir Richard Branson, and I work with things like the Volvo Ocean Race. So again, you know, in a very short amount of time, I basically went from a little girl working in her bedroom, you know, listening to gangster rap, to kind of working with some of the biggest brands in this space, the biggest people in this space, and again, all boiling down to helping them raise significant funding for their events. And then eventually, I got bored. And somebody like me, type A personality, quite crazy. When people like us get bored, I basically got bored. I sold my agency. I wrote a book, of which is here. I'll remind you later, don't worry. And so now I basically spend time on Necker Island, kind of hanging out, doing events like these, speaking to all you wonderful people, and just generally trying to be as gangster as I possibly can. But more importantly, and I think what's always really significant is, how did it all begin? How did it all come to be? How did I end up on Necker Island drinking lots of champagne in the middle of the day? Well, quite frankly, I'm going to tell you a story, mostly because I like stories, especially because it's my own personal story, and, as you people probably know, it's just so much better talking about yourself. So I grew up really liking maths. I kind of a bit of a nerd, but loved the idea of math. And the reason why I liked math so much was because if I asked anybody a question, there was a right and a wrong answer. So if I asked you, what is 2 plus 2, you would say, well, Jackie, it's 4. I could call my mom in Canada and ask her what she thinks 2 plus 2 is, and again, she would say 4. It doesn't matter what language you speak. It doesn't matter what your background is. There is a right and a wrong answer. And I've, only been taking the stage for about 5 or 10 minutes, but I'm pretty sure you probably appreciate that I am a girl who likes to be right all the time. So I loved maths. Maths was my thing. I was going to become a mathematician, super excited. My career's kind of laid out in front of me. But lo and behold, most likely like you, I went to university for maths and came out and did something that had absolutely nothing to do with what I studied, which is kind of very common for most people. My first job was the sponsorship manager at a golf resort in Canada, which was quite exciting for me, having never had a job before. And the first year, I guess actually probably within the first 30 days, I kind of went into work and I was managing the sponsorship of a golf tournament. And the sun was shining, and it was a bank was sponsoring it. Sun was shining, all these clients were super happy, it looked gorgeous out. Everybody was like thrilled. And so when I called my client, 7 days later and said, would you like to renew for next year? They're like, absolutely, Jackie, 100%. And I thought, damn, I'm good at this. I am the best sponsorship manager that ever came to be, which is, pretty good considering it's my first job. So fast forward 365 days. So the guy renewed, obviously the bank, and I woke up in the morning super excited, and it was pissing down with rain, which, if any of you play golf, is not really the kind of thing that you're looking for. So I naively didn't really think of this, and, the client was not happy. Half the people didn't even show up, which was a problem, obviously. And, it comes to pass that 7 days later when I called him and I was kind of like, Ian, you're going to renew for next year, aren't you? He didn't even pick up the phone. So I called and I didn't really understand what was going on. And I finally nailed him down 30 days later. I said, Ian, the golf tournament, we're going to do it again next year, right? And he said, no, we're not going to. And I was like, oh, shit, maybe I'm not the best sponsorship manager there ever came to be. And it got me thinking, because I didn't understand how I did everything the same, but the results were vastly different. I showed up in the morning, I was chirpy and cheerful as I normally am, and, basically, it was down to the weather. It was 100% down to the weather, and he had a really terrible experience because of the weather. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm pretty good at my job, but not good enough to manage the weather. So when you look at sponsorship and you have to consider all of the variables that come into making an event successful, that's where it gets tricky, because there are so many things you have to consider. And those multiple variables change the outcome of whether your event is successful or not. And in my case, the second time, not. But a girl that likes a challenge, I kind of decided, you know what? I'm going to figure out how I can make 2 + 2 = 4. Because in my mathematical brain, there has got to be a solution of which I might not be able to change the weather, but I should be able to, based on my own personal job, skill, achievement stuff, be able to get them to renew. So I kind of set forth and decided this is going to be my mission in life. I was going to figure out how to create sponsorship that I knew the outcomes for. So in order to do that, we have to figure out what the end goal is. What does success look like? What is the Holy Grail? If I'm going to go out and try to make every single sponsorship deal that I've ever done the most successful it possibly can be, what does that look like? Now, being, I guess, young, I asked. You know, I think when you don't know the answer, you should ask. That's kind of what I live by. And I asked every single person I ever worked with, every single brand I ever worked with, you know, what does success look like for you? Now, it's no surprise that most people say, you know, it was so successful. Our event was so successful. We had so many people. We had to hire more people just to get people through the door. Our campaign was so successful, we had to get somebody to do all of our Facebook content because we had loads of people going there. You know, it was so successful, we had to open up another tour date because we sold out of that venue already. You know, everything was so successful beyond our expectations. Everybody always says that when you ask them about whether it was successful. I'm going to kind of reroute back to that. The other thing that's quite obvious, brands want ROI, typical. Rights holders, as event owners, you want renewals and increased investment for your stuff. Now, all of this seems pretty standard, yeah? Nod. Just kind of, yeah, you're with me. The thing that's interesting here is success beyond expectation. That means that we didn't foresee what was going to happen. It means we kind of threw some shit together and thought, let's see what happens. Because you know what? No industry in the world works like that. You don't go into a surgeon's office, have open heart surgery, and end up with an extra arm. You know? Not great. And if you did, that wouldn't be successful now, would it? So the point of this is that a lot of the times with sponsorship and sponsorship deals, you put it together without really any understanding of what goals, metrics, and objectives you've got set for. So that's a problem. Because if we're thinking that we're doing a good job by stuff that we don't anticipate to happen, that's not good. Again, going back to having an extra arm if you are having heart surgery. Not positive, people. So how do we kind of manage that? So why aren't we able to understand what a partnership can do for us? Why aren't we able to foresee what the future of utilizing sponsorship with our event could be? What are we missing? Now, I argue very, very strongly, if you've seen me before, and I just argue strongly all the time, the reason we can't anticipate these things, and the reason actually the variables are becoming a lot more trickier, is because the game has changed. Sponsorship is fundamentally different than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And yet all of the kind of communication, all of the presentations you see about sponsorship are kind of based on this historical, antiquated ideology of sponsorship about getting money for branding or a logo or any of that kind of stuff. So I want to go into that in a lot more detail because the point is if you understand how to play the game that we're playing now, you can be as successful as I will be in hanging out in Necker Island. Perhaps not, but the point is that these are simple things and we do them instinctively as consumers about the way that we engage with the world, and yet we don't actually act like that. We don't bring on partnership like that. And it all boils down to audience. So sponsorship is always about a brand working with an events owner to build a relationship with an audience, whether that's a new audience, whether they're reinforcing a current audience. It's all about people. Now, when you think about people, It's how we communicate to those people. And one of the biggest things that have changed is that one-way communications have now become two-way communications. What that means is 15 years ago, if you were to get any information about a brand or an event like this, you would find out about it through the radio, through print, or TV. That's it. Brands would talk at you. You would then take that information and go about your day making those decisions with how you do. However, now we are in a world where we can communicate with brands. If I got a finger in my Coca-Cola can, I could actually tweet Coca-Cola, and they would respond. If I didn't actually like the service of a restaurant, I can actually communicate that. I can review that. I have influence with how a brand communicates with me. That is so different to anything else we've ever lived through. And we take it for granted as marketers, as event people. We take it for granted as consumers because it's so part of our day-to-day. But when you go back to the fact that sponsorship is about audience, this is fundamental. And I'm just going to show a little video about it, just to nail it. I mean, I'm loving all the clapping. This is great for my ego. I show that video because it puts stuff into perspective, and again, bringing it back to the fact that it's audience. The world is changing, and yet as sponsorship, and quite frankly, sometimes with events, we're not changing as quickly with it. Now, I like to show the video. Everybody loves the video. I like to give the stats. Everybody loves the stats. But usually the thing that I think resonates the most is if I tell you a story, a bit of a personal story. So, as I mentioned, I worked with kind of globally all of the biggest players, and I was on a long-haul flight at least once a week. I traveled a lot. And, when you're younger and you think, ooh, it's so sexy, it's amazing, actually, it's terrible. And I found that I am actually a lot more OCD and demanding than I thought I was. And one of the things that is quite OCD about me is pillows. It turns out I am kind of crazy about the pillow of which I sleep in, especially if I don't sleep very much. I am crazy about it, like pretty crazy. And so let's take a typical journey. I just got back from Hong Kong, so let's just use that as an example. Again, this is to illustrate the one-way and two-way communications thing. But 10 years ago, I would have got on a plane and would have opened the in-flight magazine. And let's say there was an ad, and it said, Hilton hotels in Hong Kong have the best pillows. Now, I would think, perfect. I love pillows. I'm going to Hong Kong. They're telling me that they've got the best pillows. This is good. I land in Hong Kong. I get off the plane. I walk down the corridor. There's a 48-sheet advertisement. There's a girl that looks like me, has had a really good sleep, and there's a quote, and it says, Hilton hotels in Hong Kong have the best pillows. They're goose down. And I think, I love down pillows. Perfect. Check. Nice. I go pick up my suitcase. I walk through customs. Now, I don't ask the person at the information desk because she obviously lives in Hong Kong and wouldn't know. But let's say I pick up a pamphlet, and there's some more information about their pillows. Let's say they're sustainable. Maybe the hotel is about 40 minutes away. Now, there's no doubt in my mind or anybody's mind that the hotel that I would choose to stay at in that journey would be Hilton Hotels Hong Kong. But let's fast forward, because it wasn't 10 years ago, it was last week. And what I did before I booked my flight, ironically, because I'm crazy, is I went on to TripAdvisor. And I typed in the word hotel pillows. And it turns out Hilton hotels in Hong Kong have terrible pillows, the worst. Somebody complained that it was lumpy. Somebody else complained that actually the down was gross. Somebody said one smelled. So let's take the exact same journey. I get on the plane, I open up the in-flight magazine, there's an advertisement, and it says, Hilton hotels have the best pillows in Hong Kong. And I think, you are lying. I get off there, we land in Hong Kong, I walk down, there's a 48 sheet, and there's a girl that looks like me, well rested, says Hilton hotels in Hong Kong have the best pillows. And I think, damn. They're spending a lot of money trying to fix this pillow problem they've got with this hotel, aren't they? I go pick up my bag, and I don't go to the information desk because I already know where I'm staying because I've already booked. And it's not Hilton Hotels. Now, if Hilton Hotels CEO was there with a megaphone telling me to stay at Hilton Hotels in Hong Kong, I still would not stay there. Because the information that I received was independent, was well worse. The things that influenced my decision changed. When I made that decision changed. And this is a simple thing, but it illustrates how vital it is to understand this, because if you're going to talk about sponsorship and you want to get a brand to spend millions of pounds on your next event, if you don't understand this, you're not speaking their language. If you don't understand this, you don't understand how to make their brand money. And remember, in the beginning, that's all I do. I just make people money. And the reason I'm good at that is because I understand this. So the things and how we as consumers go about the world, how we spend our money, how we talk about things we love, what brands we communicate with, what we become advocates of, changed so fundamentally and so quickly. Now, I'd like to give an actual sponsorship case study now, which is a little bit better, of the Coca-Cola Polar Bears. So I'm just going to play the video. It'll be self-explanatory.
Coca-Cola asked us to bring back the polar bears for this year's big matchup between New England and New York. The agency knew it would be a challenge. Cute bears and football don't necessarily go together, unless they're part of an unprecedented campaign. the first to fully integrate football, polar bears, and how viewers consume media in and around the most watched sporting event on Earth. It started with a digital idea that cast the polar bears as football fans, one rooting for New England, one for New York, then invited America to watch the Bears watch the game live. As the game was played, we puppeted the polar bears, making them react to everything that happened in real time. When New England scored, the New England Bear celebrated. When New York scored, the New York Bear did the same. And when the halftime show really got going, so did the Bears. They even reacted to the advertising, from the racy ads to the patriotic ads to the ads of our competitors. The entire campaign generated enormous chatter. Twitter and Facebook lit up with over 5,000 comments per minute. And despite not having thumbs, the polar bears responded to fans in real time. Fans who were watching the Bears watched the game on over 9 million screens, and watching for an average of 28 minutes per screen. That's a really long commercial. That's also a lot of eyeballs. When the television aired, the spots were synced with our digital stream and also reacted to the game. Multiple versions were produced and aired based on how the game was going. After the game, publications looking beyond traditional advertising ranked the campaign as a first, carving out a new space for digital, real-time advertising with unprecedented results. Not bad for a webcam from the Arctic.
Now that's a good one to show because it's kind of sponsorship, but actually, ironically, it's not. So I just want to kind of go through the stats again. 9 million users tuned in to an average dwell time of 28 minutes. Now everybody can say, good, that's amazing. How smart of them. But actually, it's more interesting. When you look at the cost of a 30-second ad, that's $3.5 million US. The value of that was $195 million. Now, what becomes even more interesting is the fact that Coca-Cola, shock horror, wasn't even a sponsor. Pepsi was. I know. You can clap again. Sure, go on then. But again, you know, this is a really fundamental insight about how brands are using stuff. And the smart ones are understanding how to utilize the communications chains and how people are engaging with the stuff. Now, just imagine if Coca-Cola was the sponsor and all of the additional assets that they could have bought that could have made that campaign even bigger and even better. And you start to get an understanding and appreciation that sponsorship not only can change a brand, actually it can change your event. But you have to think about it in the way that we live the world today. So fundamentally, you know, what this boils down to is please stop selling logos. You know, I really wanted to be the woman or the agency that basically did all of their sponsorship deals without any logos. I had a hard time convincing all my clients to do that, but I kind of shifted them a bit. But the reason why is our over-reliance on selling sponsorship packages where you get a logo on a lanyard, you get a logo on the holding slide, you get a logo on the press board, actually isn't adding any value. Pepsi was a sponsor. Pepsi had their logo on everything. Pepsi had their logo on their t-shirt. However, Coca-Cola understood how to utilize the assets. Coca-Cola understood why people watch the game. So as event organizers, I beg of you, stop selling logos. And the reason why, it's not because I think you should just stop selling logos and everybody should listen to me because I'm right, which, by the way, I mostly am. The reason is because brands aren't buying them. So if you want to make money, don't sell stuff that nobody wants to buy. Don't overinflate your packages with a bunch of assets that brands won't get ROI from. They already know this doesn't work. Which presents a problem. And this is the big kind of shit kicker. If you're not selling logos, what the hell are you selling? And so that's kind of an issue. And that is a whole nother presentation for a whole nother day, so bring me back to Kyiv and I'll tell you more about it. But more importantly, it is about, if you're not going to sell a logo, if you're going to look at, you got to start thinking, what are my assets? You got to start being more Coca-Cola. You got to go back to the video about social media. How does my audience engage? How can a brand engage with my audience at the event? And more importantly, how can a brand add value to my event to help me reach the objectives we're both trying to reach? So I put together a couple things about how to start thinking like this, because it really is a mindset thing. And usually when you are an event and you create a sponsorship package, it's often the afterthought. And it's very, very easy to kind of fill that sponsorship package with a logo on this and a logo on that. But quite honestly, if I challenged you to take your event sponsorship package and redline everything that had a logo in it, you'd be left with very little to sell. So it's really about what can you bring to the table, because actually you have a lot to offer, you're just not selling it.
O2 wanted to find a way for supporters to get closer to the Irish rugby team, to make the fans feel that their support could actually make a difference. So we gave supporters an opportunity to record a team talk for the players. On BeTheDifference.ie, fans could record their own team talk at home and view other supporters' videos. The best team talks were played to the team and on the giant screens at Croke Park Stadium before the games. But what if you didn't want to record a stirring speech? What else could we do to encourage supporters to participate? We gave them a chance to become the very fibre of the team. Their names would make up the numbers the players wore. Fans who signed up online were in with a chance to have their name printed onto a jersey. Supporters could then search for their name on our site to see which player they were a part of. And social networking sites allowed the fans to chat with each other and with the players. Over 85,000 fans registered their support to get behind the team.
He's got taste of bird! He does!
So let's just mention the Irish shirts, which are a really fantastic idea.
Lads, I only ever saw my old man cry once. Not at my wedding, not at my sister's wedding, but Raj, when you got that drop goal last season, unbelievable event. So could we repeat that again? I'd like to see the old tear in his eye. Thanks.
So I love showing that one because it is a very straightforward thing. Sponsorship of a sporting event, right? Really basic shit. But what they did, and what's unique here, is that they took something that they didn't even know was an asset, the numbers on the shirt. They used that to incorporate user generation with their fans. Nobody had done that before. So when I challenge you to start thinking outside of the box in terms of not using a logo, there are things you own that are valuable for brands. You just need to start looking at your event slightly different. Now I want to show you something else, because it's, that is a really great example of a bigger budget with a sporting event, but it's not always about the money. And I've worked on loads of things. I would probably count some of my more successful sponsorship deals have been with no budget and amazing results, because, that's kind of what you always want. But I'm just going to show you another one that actually is not just a fraction, it actually costs nothing to make. So what's really amazing about that is Coca-Cola really understood their brand and what their brand stood for and what is the feeling that you want people to have when you're drinking a Coca-Cola. And that cost nothing. You know, it's one actor, to be honest, probably a staff member, and a camera. And so it really is about what is the heart of my event? Who are the brands that I want to get involved in? How can we work together to make moments like that happen? Because it's easy to do. It just requires a little bit of effort and a little bit of thinking outside the box. So in terms of the new rules, and these are the things that you should be taking away with you, so, you know, scribble down intently. But I cannot stress enough, sponsorship no longer is about a logo. So if you're going to go sell sponsorship, if you're going to go buy sponsorship, if you want to bring sponsorship to your event, you need to think beyond this. Otherwise, you're selling shit that nobody wants, and then it becomes really difficult. Sell stuff that people want. Give them opportunities to create campaigns like this with your event, with you. And that's when you truly get magic to happen. That's when you see a growth in your event. That's when you see more attendees come. That's when you see more brands come on board. Second, authenticity is key. You know, what makes you you? What makes your event you? What makes your attendees different than any other event? And again, a simple message resonates further as seen with Coca-Cola. So I'm just going to leave with some future trends in event sponsorship. I don't know if we've got time for questions, probably not, depending on how we get on. But I wanted to show you a video, actually, before I explain it. So that is just a regular video, but actually the story behind it's amazing. So everybody knows North Face as a brand? Yeah? Okay, cool. Basically, they do outdoorsy things. So jackets, trousers, whatever. Outdoorsy things. There are 4 outdoorsy people. But when you are the North Face, and actually when you start thinking about it, how do you reach outdoorsy people? Because they're outdoors. You know, you can't capture them on the sofa. They're not home. You can't, you know, find them on a rock. And they're outdoors. They're getting out with nature. And nature is a big place. It's very difficult to advertise in nature as well. But further to that, outdoorsy people don't get together in groups. So all of us all work in events. We've got hundreds of people here. If I wanted to sell something to you, I could just, you know, flog something at you. Outdoorsy people, they take their buddy. They go climb a mountain. You know, they take their self. They go do yoga in the park. So North Face has a very difficult time effectively and efficiently marketing to their target audience. So what they've always done is they've sponsored things. So they'll sponsor a hike. You know, maybe they'll sponsor, they don't do marathons, but maybe they'll sponsor a big camping expo. Maybe they'll sponsor a yoga retreat. But as I'm sure you know, by doing that, that actually takes up a lot of resources, and it's not efficient. It's very expensive. It's not like going and sponsoring a sporting event all over the world. And so what they did is, you know, they just kept banging their head against the table because it's how do we get all of our audience in one place that we can speak to them and tell them about us and tell them about our product and gain that brand loyalty. And they could not keep sponsoring random events. And so finally, somebody smart in the room decided, you know, screw this. Why are we sponsoring random events that don't actually fit with our brand? Why don't we create our own event? And so what they did is they created this, which is the Night Rave Festival. And it does all of the things, all of the activities that you need to use North Face products for. It has climb. Well, you've seen it. It has yoga. It has climb. It has all of those things. But what's even better, and this is the part that I love, is they thought, God, this is expensive, creating our own event. Why don't we find another brand that has the same problem that we do and get them to sponsor it? Which is why you see Jeep there. So this is a trend that is happening with brands because they're having a hard time finding those events that are adapting to their changing brand needs. And what they're doing is they're creating their own event that is specific and bespoke to their audience because they know their audience better. And the smart brands are getting other brands to pay for it. That's one trend.
You got my blind heart holding on to you, and I try to control it, but I lose. You got my blind heart holding on to you.
Connect your Spotify Premium account. Choose your music and it will stream in your Uber. There's a playlist for every ride. And now, the music doesn't have to end. Your ride, your music. Available on November 21st in select cities.
So I'm going to gloss over this because this is like a whole other presentation in itself. But this is something called Open API, which is, I don't know where my slide, it's coming out. It's called Open API, and what this means is it gives technology companies and technology platforms the ability to create and collaborate and create partnerships without any kind of physical need to do so. That's a really great example of two technology companies using Open API to create a sponsorship. Okay. Third one. One massive trend, and again, this is important for event owners, is that brands are starting to question, is my sponsorship working? And I don't know how many of you were in Timo's workshop, but he actually utilized this as one of his case studies. But Vodafone is a broadband provider, a technology provider, and they initially sponsored Formula One kind of 18 years ago now. And the reason that they did so is because they wanted to be seen as innovative and forward-thinking, fast-paced, technological, all of those great things that Formula One is associated with. They have spent hundreds of millions of pounds on developing their team, racing their team, being in the forefront of basically this kind of technology and engineering. However, a couple years ago, God, I think it's 4 now, they had invested and they had such a historical legacy with this, and nobody ever decided to question, is this sponsorship working? But more than that is this platform still saying the same thing that we initially signed up for? And actually, if you think about it, if you ask somebody on the street, what is innovation to you? What is being the first to you? What is forward thinking to you? Because we have now access to so much more information, those answers are not as straightforward. So what they tried to align with has changed so dramatically over the past 15 years that they thought, rather than sponsor something that actually only now is relevant to a small demographic, let's make innovation and forward-thinkingness part of our DNA, part of our customers, part of the people that decide to buy us. And so they actually binned their long-standing history and team with Formula One in lieu of something that they developed called Vodafone Firsts. So if you were in Timo's, you would have seen one case study. But again, this is just a way that people are utilizing technology and digital activation to kind of still meet those objectives, but it doesn't necessarily have to be embedded within an event or a sponsorship platform. So I just wanted to show you slightly Vodafone Firsts.
Nordschleife ist die ultimative Herausforderung. Hier ist die grüne Hölle.
Die grüne Hölle. Oh Gott, Mensch. Jetzt ist mal die Zeit, um mal zu zeigen, dass ich cooler bin als Dani.
Schon ein
kleines Weicheis, kann ich das sagen? Ja?
Auf damit! Wir sind bereit für eine Runde auf der Nürburgring.
So it's a really interesting way that they've taken something that was long historical and still, you know, that was a motorsport activation, but they also did stuff, if you saw Timo saying, it was actually about hearing and the ability to adapt innovation products around medical devices, really. So in terms of, just to summarize, future trends in sponsorship, specifically events, is that you see brands becoming rights holders themselves. Brands getting fed up with the, I guess, packages that they're being offered and actually bidding that in favor of doing their own events and then becoming a rights holder and selling their rights to other brands. Second is Open API has created a huge amount of opportunities, both for events as well as for digital technology and open platforms. The third is unofficial platforms and partnerships. So again, Vodafone used a very traditional Formula One event to activate in terms of their stance around innovation and being forward-thinking. And rather than actually go and find another sponsorship, they've created their own platform. So this changes the landscape really, really dramatically. And I just wanted to leave you with one
Bing,
last one.
Microsoft's search engine,
My
came to
favorite.
us
This
to
is
drive
important,
trial
this
of
one.
Bing search and maps and increase their relevance with a young audience. At the same time, we knew that Jay-Z would soon be launching his autobiography, Decoded. With one big idea, we harnessed this epic moment in pop culture, connected our client to a new demographic, and gave millions a reason to use Bing. We started by putting every page of Jay-Z's book out in the world, every day for a month, prior to the book's release. But the pages weren't just randomly placed. Every page's location was inspired by the story on each page, putting Jay-Z's entire biography in context. Fans could actually walk through Jay-Z's life, right where it happened, finding pages in 13 major cities in the US and abroad, searching for everything from huge iconic billboards to unique collectible items. And if the media didn't exist near Jay-Z's life landmarks, we created it, taking the campaign to places money just can't buy. Gucci made custom jackets stitched with a page. A Cadillac wrapped with pages paid homage to the birthplace of New York hip-hop. A page about Big Pimpin' covered the bottom of the Delano pool. Even a bronze plaque was installed in the Marcy Projects, where Jay-Z spent his childhood. We let the story on each page determine each location. The unique pages covered hundreds of thousands of square miles. And as they were unveiled around the world, Bing tied every element of the campaign together with an integrated online game that directed fans to each page on the streets. Clues to the page locations were released daily through Facebook, Twitter, and radio. And every day for a month, millions of people gathered to solve the latest clues, guiding them to the exact street locations on Bing Search and Maps, documenting and claiming the pages they found. The unique framework allowed anyone, anywhere to walk the same streets and find a page. And over the course of the month-long campaign, they chased fame of their own as they assembled the book digitally at bing.com/Jay-Z before the hardcover hit stores. Every single piece of the campaign was woven together with Bing technology to allow fans to experience his story. Average player engagement on our website was over 11 minutes. Jay-Z's Facebook followers grew by 1 million. And Decoded hit the bestsellers list for 19 straight weeks. Decode Jay-Z's success was covered by every major news outlet, every major cultural influencer. Even other celebrities weighed in. Bing became part of the pop culture conversation. And in only 1 month, Bing saw an 11.7% increase in visits, entering the global top 10 most visited sites for the first time, and earning 1.1 billion media impressions.
So I thought I'd leave you with something a little gangster. So the reason I show that, and I show every new client I ever work with, which is quite fun because I work with some pretty seriously corporate brands, I show that to them because this is the changing face of sponsorship, and this is what it means to be good at doing sponsorship. And what does that mean? It means it's truly integrated. And how that looks and what that feels like is that I want you to kind of answer a couple questions in your head. I'd love you to, you don't have to tell me now, but who do you think the sponsor is? Ask yourself. Who do you think the rights holder was? And actually, I want you to argue the point because I guarantee you the person next to you will think something different. And the point of this is that there is no longer such a thing as rights holders look like this and do this and sell these things. Brands do this and this is how they work. We now live in an amazing opportunity, and this is kind of how you make money, is by truly understanding these concepts. So just to kind of wrap up, I will be outside. I have a book. If you're interested in any of this stuff, my book has a lot more stories, and perhaps maybe a little bit more interesting than I am standing out here. And so I'll be outside signing books. I only have as many as I can carry, and although I'm relatively gangster, I'm pretty weak, so it's not a lot. But thank you very much.